Be me, Sergio, just a regular guy in my late 20s. Work as a software engineer for a pretty decent tech company. Not FANG level, but they pay well and the work is interesting. My department is the core of the company's main product. We're the guys who build and maintain the engine that makes all the money. For years, it was a finely tuned machine. The team was about a dozen guys, a real meritocracy. If you were good, you were respected. If you were a slacker, you didn't last long. Our boss was this old-timer who had been a coder since the days of punch cards. He only cared about one thing: clean code that shipped on time. He left us alone. We delivered. Everyone was happy. Our team had some real characters. There was Dean, the grizzled veteran, almost 60, been with the company forever. The guy was a living legend. He knew the system so well he could probably rewrite it from memory on a whiteboard. If there was a bug no one could solve, you went to Dean. He'd stare at the screen for 5 minutes, not saying a word, then point to a single line of code and say, "There, that's your problem." And he was always right. He didn't say much, but you listened when he did. Then there was Lucas. He was our unofficial team lead, charismatic, super smart, and one of the best architects I've ever met. He was the guy who could see the big picture. He knew how all the different parts of the system connected. He was also the one who shielded us from most of the corporate nonsense from other departments. He handled the politics so we could focus on coding. Everyone looked up to Lucas. He was the kind of guy you'd follow into a fire. We also had Hunter, the youngest on the team. Kid was sharp, a fast learner, and eager to prove himself. He had a ton of energy and was always experimenting with new tech. Dean and Lucas kind of took him under their wing, mentoring him. The rest of us were just solid, competent engineers. We all had our specializations, and we trusted each other completely. Our communication was efficient. No long meetings. We'd have a 10-minute stand-up in the morning. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? Any roadblocks? That's it. Problems were solved by walking over to someone's desk and talking for 5 minutes. We had a running group chat that was mostly technical questions, shared articles, and a healthy dose of dark humor and memes. It worked. We consistently hit our targets. Our product was stable, and we were known as the most reliable department in the company. We were a brotherhood, in a way. We worked hard together, and sometimes we'd go for beers after a big release. No drama, just results. This perfect setup lasted for years. Then, one day, we get an email. Our old boss was retiring. We were all a bit sad to see him go, but we figured they'd just promote Lucas or another senior guy. Made sense. We were wrong. A week later, a company-wide announcement introduces our new department head. Her name is Daisy. Her picture shows a smiling woman in her early 30s with a very corporate-looking haircut. Her bio was interesting. It didn't mention a single technical project. It was all about her experience in people management, fostering inclusive workplace cultures, and driving synergistic team growth. A lot of buzzwords, not a lot of substance. We all kind of looked at each other. This was new. The first day she arrives, she calls a mandatory, hour-long introductory meeting in the main conference room, not our usual space. That was the first red flag. An hour-long meeting on a Monday morning? That's an hour of coding time gone forever. We all file in. Daisy is standing at the front of the room, smiling brightly. She starts by saying how excited she is to join the company's most productive and vital team. Then she explains her philosophy. She says that while our technical output is impressive, she's here to work on the human side of the department. Her goal is to transform our culture from one of isolated producers to a collaborative, emotionally aware family. Dean, sitting in the back, makes a sound that's halfway between a cough and a laugh. Daisy ignores it and keeps going. She talks about creating a safe space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their feelings. She says she wants to break down the barriers of traditional masculinity that she feels can stifle creativity and emotional expression in tech environments. My brain just kind of short-circuited. We're here to write code that powers a multi-million-dollar product, and she's talking about our feelings and masculinity. It felt like we were in a different universe. She ends the meeting by announcing her first official change. The daily 10-minute stand-up meetings are canceled. Instead, we will now have a 1-hour weekly emotional check-in every Monday morning. Attendance is mandatory. The purpose, she explains, is not to talk about work, but to go around the room and share how we're feeling, both personally and professionally. You could have heard a pin drop. Lucas, ever the diplomat, raises his hand. He tries to explain that the daily stand-ups are critical for our workflow, for keeping everyone in sync on a fast-moving project. Daisy just smiles and says, "Don't worry, Lucas. We'll find new, more emotionally resonant ways to sync up. This is about building trust on a deeper level." We leave the meeting in a state of confused silence. The first emotional check-in was as bad as you can imagine. It was painfully awkward. Daisy starts, sharing a long story about how a sad movie she watched over the weekend made her feel vulnerable but also connected to the human experience. Then she looks at the first guy in the circle. "Your turn." A dozen engineers, used to talking about code, are now being forced to talk about their feelings to their new boss. Most guys just mumbled something like, "I'm fine, a bit tired, ready to work." When it was Dean's turn, he just said, "My feeling is that we're wasting an hour of peak productivity time." Daisy's smile tightened just a little. She told him that was a valid feeling of anxiety, stemming from a results-oriented mindset, and that the group was a safe space to explore that. Dean just stared at her blankly. This became our new reality. Every Monday morning, an hour of cringeworthy, forced emotional exhibitionism. Productivity immediately took a hit. That lost hour on Monday had a ripple effect through the whole week. But it didn't stop there. A few weeks later, Daisy introduces her next great idea: mandatory workshops. The first one was on unconscious bias. We had to spend an entire afternoon in a conference room with a consultant who told us how our subconscious minds were filled with problematic assumptions. We did role-playing exercises. It was humiliating. I had to pretend to be a coworker I had unconsciously offended by asking a direct question about a project timeline. The next workshop was on nonviolent communication. We were told that using words like actually, but, or no in a discussion could be perceived as linguistic aggression. We were given a list of approved phrases to use instead. Instead of saying, "No, that approach won't work because of X," we were supposed to say, "I hear your perspective, and I'm feeling a sense of concern about its potential impact on X. I wonder if we could explore other feelings about this." Trying to debug a critical server outage using this language was a nightmare. What used to be a 30-second conversation turned into a 10-minute verbal dance. Daisy started sitting in on our technical meetings. She wouldn't contribute anything about the actual work, of course. She didn't have the background for it. Instead, she would interrupt to comment on the dynamics of the conversation. She'd stop a technical debate between two senior engineers to say things like, "Dean, I'm sensing a lot of aggressive energy from your tone. Can you rephrase that from a place of 'I feel' instead of 'you are'?" Dean would just look at her, then at the whiteboard, full of diagrams, and you could see the will to live draining from his eyes. The team's informal communication culture was destroyed. Our group chat, once a lively hub of activity, went silent. No one wanted to risk posting a meme that could be misinterpreted as problematic. People stopped walking over to each other's desks to solve problems quickly. It was easier to just struggle alone than to risk a conversation that might get you a lecture from Daisy about your communication style. Everything had to be done through official channels and documented with new, cumbersome ticketing systems she implemented. Systems that required us to fill out a field for the emotional impact of the task. The atmosphere in the office changed. It used to be relaxed and focused. Now, it was tense. Everyone was walking on eggshells. Morale plummeted. The passion for the work was being suffocated by a thick blanket of corporate psychobabble. We were spending more time talking about how we felt about the work than actually doing the work, and it started to show. For the first time in years, we missed a minor deadline, just by a day, but it had never happened before. Daisy didn't seem to care. At the weekly check-in, she said she was proud of the team for prioritizing a healthy process over rigid deadlines. Lucas tried to talk to her privately. He was always the one who tried to build bridges. He booked a meeting with her and prepared a presentation. He had charts and data showing the decline in our productivity, the increase in time spent in non-technical meetings, and the growing backlog of tasks. He presented it calmly and professionally. He wasn't blaming her, just laying out the facts. He wanted to find a solution. I know this because he told me about it later. He said Daisy listened to his entire presentation without saying a word, just nodding with a thoughtful expression. When he was done, she thanked him for being brave enough to share his feelings of anxiety about the numbers. She told him that he was viewing the situation through a narrow, masculine lens of pure data. She explained that what he saw as a drop in productivity, she saw as a healthy period of cultural adjustment. She said that true sustainable success wasn't measured in cold, hard metrics, but in the emotional well-being and synergistic harmony of the team. Lucas was stunned. He was trying to prevent a disaster using logic, and she responded by analyzing his feelings and his gender. He told me that was the moment he knew it was hopeless. You can't reason with someone who believes feelings are more important than facts, especially when those facts are threatening the company's bottom line. After that conversation, Lucas changed. He became quieter, more reserved. The spark he used to have was gone. He just came in, did his work, and went home. The rest of us saw it, and it was a huge blow to morale. If even Lucas couldn't get through to her, what chance did we have? The situation continued to deteriorate. We missed another deadline. This time it was a more important one. A client was annoyed. Daisy's response was to organize a team harmony luncheon so we could all reconnect on a human level. The project manager from another department came to our area, looking for an update on a critical component he needed. He saw us all sitting around a table with catered sandwiches, doing an icebreaker exercise where we had to name our spirit animal. The look on his face was a mixture of confusion and horror. He just slowly backed away, and we never saw him again. He started emailing Daisy for everything, and she would take days to respond. The breaking point was coming. We could all feel it. The company had a huge make-or-break project that had been in the works for a year. Our department was responsible for delivering the final, most critical piece of the puzzle. The deadline was set in stone. The launch was tied to a massive marketing campaign and a press conference. In the old days, we would have crushed it. We thrived under pressure. But now, our team was a shadow of its former self. Communication was broken. The workflow was clogged with bureaucracy, and our leader was more concerned with our emotional journeys than the impending deadline. 2 weeks before the final delivery date, it was clear we were not going to make it, not even close. The code was buggy, features were incomplete, and we were spending half our days in Daisy's mandatory synergy sessions. Higher-ups started to notice. The project lead, a serious guy from the executive floor, started showing up and asking pointed questions. Daisy handled him with her usual corporate jargon, promising that the team was deeply engaged and leveraging their emotional intelligence to overcome challenges. He didn't look convinced. On the Friday before the final week, the project was a complete mess, a total dumpster fire. The executives called an emergency meeting with Daisy. We don't know what was said in that room, but she came out looking pale and shaken. For the first time, her confident smile was gone. She immediately called a mandatory all-hands meeting for our department. We all gathered in the conference room. The mood was grim. We were expecting her to finally wake up, to tell us to drop everything and work around the clock to fix the mess. We were ready for it. We were professionals, after all. But that's not what happened. Daisy stood at the front of the room and looked at us. Her expression wasn't angry. It was disappointed, like a mother whose children had let her down. She started by saying that the project was in jeopardy. Then she said she had spent a lot of time reflecting on why. She said she realized the problem wasn't the timeline, the resources, or the technical challenges. The problem, she announced, was the lingering toxic masculinity within the team's culture. She said our aggressive, solution-focused, and competitive male instincts were preventing us from truly collaborating. She claimed that our reliance on cold logic instead of shared feelings created a culture of fear where creativity couldn't flourish. We were all just staring at her, speechless. She was blaming us, our very nature as men, for the failure that her own policies had caused. Then she delivered the final blow, the line that none of us would ever forget. She looked at us, a group of men who had built and maintained the company's crown jewel for years, and said with total seriousness, "If we are going to save this project, and indeed this department, there needs to be a fundamental change. From this moment on, I need all of you to be less like men and more like women. I need you to be more feminine in your approach, more nurturing, more intuitive, more collaborative, less focus on individual achievement, and more focus on group harmony." She said it. She actually said it. The room was completely silent. It wasn't an angry silence. It was a cold, dead silence. In that moment, something broke for every single one of us. It was the ultimate insult, not just to us as professionals, but to us as people. She had taken our competence, our dedication, our entire way of working that had been so successful, and branded it as toxic and flawed. And her solution was for us to change who we were. We didn't argue. We didn't yell. We didn't say a single word. We just looked at her. Then we started looking at each other. In that shared glance, a silent agreement was made. The meeting ended. She asked if there were any questions. No one spoke. We all just got up and walked out of the room, back to our desks. The silence was so heavy you could have built a server rack on it. It was over. The team was done. And I think, deep down, we all knew it. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was a group text from Lucas. "Bar down the street, 8 p.m., everyone." No one needed to ask why. We all knew. When I got there, the whole team was already gathered in a corner booth. Dean, Lucas, Hunter, and the other 4 guys. The mood wasn't angry or loud. It was somber, resigned. Lucas bought the first round. For a few minutes, we just sat there, nursing our beers in silence. It was Dean who finally broke it. He took a long drink, set his glass down firmly, and looked around the table. "Well, that's it for me," he said. His voice was flat, matter of fact. "I was planning on working another 2 years, but not like this. I'm not going to spend my last years in the industry being lectured by some kid who thinks coding is about holding hands and singing Kumbaya." He said he was going to see HR first thing in the morning. He had enough saved up. He was done. He was going to take his pension and go fishing. No one tried to talk him out of it. We all understood. Then all eyes turned to Lucas. He was our leader, the one we all respected. He looked exhausted. He told us about a conversation he'd had a while back. A recruiter from a major competitor had reached out to him. He had been polite, but had turned them down. He was loyal to our company, to our team. He said he still had the recruiter's number, and he was going to call it tomorrow. "I tried," he said, looking at all of us. I really tried to make her understand. I showed her the data, the projections. I told her we were heading for a cliff. He shook his head. She doesn't care about the project. She doesn't care about the company. This is a social experiment for her. And we're the lab rats. He said he couldn't in good conscience lead a team under those conditions. His job was to clear roadblocks, not to navigate a minefield of emotional buzzwords. That was 2 pillars of our team gone, just like that. Hunter was next. He was genuinely upset. He said he'd looked up to Dean and Lucas, that he'd learned more from them in 2 years than in his entire time at university. "What am I supposed to learn here now?" he asked. "How to write code that is emotionally resonant. How to apologize for having a logical thought. I came here to build things, not to be re-educated." He said he was updating his resume tonight. Then it was my turn. I didn't have much to add. They'd said it all. I just told them I was with them, that I'd start looking for a new job immediately. One by one, every other guy at the table said the same thing. Unanimous. The team was officially dissolving. We made a pact right there in that bar. No drama, no shouting matches, no angry emails to HR. That's what she would expect. That would fit her narrative of toxic men having emotional outbursts. We weren't going to give her the satisfaction. We were going to do this quietly, professionally, and systematically. We would find new jobs or transfer requests, and we would leave, one by one. A quiet exodus. We would just disappear. The next week was surreal. Dean was the first. He went to HR, signed his papers, and came back to his desk to pack his things. He had a small box of personal items, a few old coding manuals, a picture of his family, his favorite coffee mug. Daisy walked by as he was packing. She saw the box and smiled. She told him she wished him well on his journey of self-discovery, and that she was excited to bring in some fresh, new perspectives to replace the old ways of thinking. She had no idea she was watching the institutional knowledge of the entire department walk out the door. Dean just nodded, didn't say a word, picked up his box, and left. He didn't even look back. A few days later, Lucas submitted his 2 weeks' notice. This time, Daisy didn't smile. She called him into her office immediately. We could see them through the glass wall. She looked shocked, betrayed. She was talking animatedly, gesturing with her hands. He just sat there, calm and still. He told us later that she offered him a raise, a promotion, a new title. Co-leader of cultural synergy, or some other nonsense. He politely declined everything. She then tried to guilt-trip him. She asked how he could abandon the family they were trying to build. He simply told her that his professional goals no longer aligned with the department's new direction. When he came out of the office, Daisy looked frantic. She was starting to realize this wasn't an isolated incident. That week, Hunter and I polished our resumes and started sending them out. It was a seller's market for experienced engineers. Within days, we were both flooded with calls from recruiters. I had 3 interviews lined up by the end of the week. It was a weird feeling. In the office, I was going through the motions, pretending to care about Daisy's synergy sessions. In the evenings, I was interviewing for my future. The atmosphere in the department was a ghost town. With Dean gone and Lucas on his way out, the heart of the team had been ripped out. No one talked. Everyone just had their headphones on, pretending to work. But we were all doing the same thing, searching for an escape route. I accepted an offer from a mid-sized company that was building some really interesting tech. The pay was better, and during the interview, the manager talked about shipping products and writing clean code. It felt like coming home. The day I handed in my resignation letter was deeply satisfying. I walked into Daisy's office and placed it on her desk. She looked at it, then up at me. The panic in her eyes was now clearly visible. "You too, Sergio?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What is going on?" I just gave her the standard line. A great opportunity came up that I couldn't pass on. She tried to argue. She said I was making a mistake, that I was running away from a chance to grow emotionally as a professional. I didn't engage. I just thanked her for her time and walked out. 2 other guys submitted their transfers to different departments that same day. They were lucky. Their skills were transferable, and other managers were happy to poach experienced talent. By the time Lucas's last day came around, the department was in a state of total collapse. The big project was dead in the water. Daisy had hired a few new people to replace us, a couple of junior devs fresh out of school, and someone from a marketing background who was passionate about team dynamics. They were completely lost. They didn't understand the system, the architecture, or the mountain of technical debt that had accumulated in the past few months. My 2-week notice period was a farce. I was supposed to be doing knowledge transfer. I would sit in a room with the new hires and try to explain a complex system that had taken me years to master. They would just stare at me with blank eyes, nodding along, but I could tell they didn't understand a single thing. Daisy would pop into these meetings and praise the collaborative energy. Meanwhile, critical systems were starting to fail. An automated report server crashed. Dean was the only one who knew its quirks. It stayed down for 3 days. A major database query started timing out, slowing the entire platform to a crawl. Lucas would have diagnosed it in an hour. The new team spent a week just trying to figure out which database it was. Daisy's solution to every technical problem was to hold a meeting to share our feelings about the challenge. She was in full-on panic mode. Her emails became more and more unhinged. She would send out long, rambling messages at 3 a.m. about the importance of believing in the process and manifesting success through positive affirmation. She started micromanaging the few people left, standing over their shoulders and asking if their code was inclusive. The executives were furious. The launch date for the big project came and went. The company had to issue a humiliating press release announcing an indefinite delay. Millions of dollars in marketing spend went down the drain. The Monday after my last day, I got a text from a friend in another department. All hell is breaking loose up here. The CEO just walked into Daisy's department. He does not look happy. Later that day, I got the full story. The CEO, along with the head of engineering and an HR executive, had descended on the department. They had printouts, charts showing the department's productivity falling off a cliff, a list of every senior engineer who had quit or transferred in the last month, a summary of the financial losses from the failed project. They sat Daisy down in her own glass-walled office so everyone could see. She tried to give them her usual speech about culture and toxic masculinity. According to my friend, the CEO, a no-nonsense guy who had started the company in his garage, cut her off mid-sentence. He pointed to the list of names: Dean, Lucas, me, Hunter, all the others. "These were my best people," he said, his voice cold as ice. "They built this company, and they all left in less than 2 months. The problem isn't their masculinity. The problem is you." She apparently broke down completely, started crying and talking about how she was just trying to create a better workplace. They didn't fire her. For legal reasons, that would have been messy. They did something much worse. They stripped her of all her authority, effective immediately. They brought in a veteran engineer from another division to act as the new interim head, with the sole task of trying to salvage what was left. And Daisy? They gave her a new title: Special Projects Coordinator for Internal Initiatives. It was a classic corporate exile, a meaningless job in a forgotten corner of the office. No team, no responsibilities, no power. Her only task was to organize the company's annual charity bake sale. It was a public, professional execution. A few months went by. My new job is great. I work with professionals, we focus on the work, and we ship great products. No one has ever asked me to share my feelings about a database schema. Lucas and Hunter ended up getting hired by the same company as me. We have lunch together sometimes. It's like the old days, but without the stress. I heard Dean bought a boat and is spending his days fishing on the lake. He sends pictures sometimes. He looks 10 years younger. The old department never recovered. They had to scrap the big project entirely, taking a massive financial hit. They lost their reputation as the company's elite team. Now, they're just the place where junior devs go to get experience before leaving for a better job. I had to go back to the old office one last time to pick up a final paycheck and sign some HR forms. As I was walking through the building, I saw her. I saw Daisy. She was sitting alone at a small desk in an open-plan area, far from any of the main departments. She was surrounded by posters for the upcoming bake sale. She was just staring at her computer screen, but she wasn't typing. She had a blank, empty look on her face. Our eyes met for a second. There was no anger in her expression, no confidence, just a hollowed-out look of defeat. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I just felt a kind of detached pity. She tried to change us. She tried to fix something that wasn't broken. In the end, she didn't change a thing about us. We just moved on. The only thing she broke was the team, the project, and ultimately herself.